Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are diving into a secret weapon for web developers, the Origin private file system. Now, this isn't just some small upgrade. It's a total game changer that gives web apps the kind of raw power and speed you usually only see in desktop software. Let's get into it.
All right, let's start with a problem I think we've all felt. That performance gap. Why can a desktop app on your computer just chew through massive files without breaking a sweat, but a web app, it just stumbles and freezes? Well, it all comes down to one thing: access. And the reason is actually pretty simple. See, desktop apps have this direct highway to your computer's files, which makes them lightning fast. Web apps, though, they're stuck taking this long, winding, indirect road. They're constantly making copies of files, sending them back and forth, and going through all these security layers. It's not built for that kind of heavy lifting. But what if we could just change all that? What if your browser had its own high-performance, totally private hard drive built right in?
Well, that's exactly what this solution is. Meet the Origin Private File System, or OPFS for short. The best way to think about it is like a virtual private hard drive that lives inside your browser. And the key thing is, only the website you're on can see it and use it. It's completely hidden from your regular file explorer, but it gives that web app some incredible power to manage data super efficiently. And it acts just like a real file system. A developer can create folders, create files, and organize data, just like you would on your desktop. The big difference, though, is that it's sandboxed. Think of it as being inside its own secure, isolated box. And that isolation is what makes it so incredibly fast and safe, because it gets to bypass a lot of the usual browser security checks. So what's the secret sauce here? What actually makes OPFS so much faster? Well, the real magic isn't just what it is, but where and how a developer gets to use it. You see, OPFS has two different modes. On the main thread, that's the part of the browser that's handling everything you see and click on. It works asynchronously. And that's really smart because it stops the web page from freezing up while it's processing files. But the real game changer, the really exciting part, happens in the background, inside something called a web worker. Inside that background web worker, a developer gets a direct, synchronous connection to the file. And this is the holy grail of performance. We're talking about the exact same kind of low-level, direct access that powerful desktop apps use. This is what allows really complex software, especially code compiled into WebAssembly, to just run at its absolute maximum speed, all inside a browser tab. Okay, so with all this new power, what can we actually build? What does this even look like out in the real world? The impact is just huge. And we're not just talking about some minor speed bumps here. We're talking about bringing entire classes of professional, desktop-grade applications straight to the web. So imagine editing massive Photoshop files, running a full-blown SQL database, or even trimming and rendering video, all of it happening locally, right there in your browser at nearly native speed. This all sounds incredible, right? But if you're a developer, it's really important to know when to reach for this powerful new tool versus, the other storage options that are already out there. So here's a really simple way to think about it. If you're dealing with structured data, things like user settings or searchable text, basically JSON objects, then yeah, IndexedDB is probably still your best bet. But if you're working with raw binary data, really big files, or you need to read and write to specific parts of a file, OPFS is the clear winner, no question. Of course, there are a couple of challenges to keep in mind. The biggest one, especially for developers, is that it's invisible. By default, you can't just pop open your browser's developer tools and see the files in there. It's also a very modern piece of tech, so you've always got to check for browser compatibility. But hey, there's a fantastic pro tip for that visibility problem. There's an extension called OPFS Explorer, and what it does is it adds a brand new tab to Chrome's DevTools that lets you see and manage everything inside your private file system. You can browse folders, download files, delete stuff. It makes debugging so much easier. So when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, what does a technology like this really mean for the future of the web? The big takeaway is actually pretty simple. OPFS is the bridge. For decades, there's been this huge performance gap that's kept the most demanding desktop apps away from the web. Well, OPFS closes that gap. It finally lets that complex, data-heavy software run in a browser without any compromise. This is a true game changer. It's opening up a completely new frontier for what's possible online. So the question isn't really, can this be built for the web anymore? It's more like, what can't be built for the web? And that leaves one last question for all of us to think about.